Hello, my dear patrons, and welcome to your video podcast for the month of March 2019. I'm actually recording this at 2 a.m. I don't know why. I feel like lately I've just completely turned my schedule nocturnal, and it's really hard to revert back. So now when I see the rising sun, I immediately want to sleep, and then when the sky becomes dark, I go into this high energy productivity mode. I'm slowly turning into a vampire or a bat or a cat. But anyways, I'm really happy that I get to spend some quality time answering your questions candidly in this dark, quiet evening. For those of you joining me for the first time, welcome. I basically put out a new video podcast every month, and I answer some of your questions that you posted on Patreon, and I don't edit these videos. So you'll hear me stutter, you'll hear me ramble, you'll hear me probably make a lot of grammatical errors, but I think that's why I enjoy making these podcasts so much. It's like feels like I'm authentically hanging out in real time with you guys. So let's get started with the first question. I'm just gonna kind of pick these in random order. Okay, first question is going to be from Cecilia Joy, who says, "Hi, Happy. Hope you're doing well as you work towards your upcoming show. I just recently watched your live stream from January, and you said that for turning your paintings into prints, you use your scanner. Do you still use your scanner even for your larger paintings? I want to invest in a quality scanner for my art as well, but I'm afraid that it won't work well for my larger paintings." Yes, I do still use my scanner for all pieces, including the larger ones. I use an Epson V600, and I basically, so the scanning surface is like about an A4 size, or like a US letter size, so like about 8.5 by 11 inches approximately. A lot of pieces I have are larger than that, like 11 by 14, 16 by 20. So how do I scan it? Basically, I scan each segment at a time. So, for like a 16 by 20 piece, I'll just scan each quadrant individually, and then I will stitch the images together using Photoshop. There's an option called Photo Merge, and you can basically let Photoshop do all the work for you. They'll import all 4 images, and computers are very smart now, so they'll find a way to composite the images together so it looks like one seamless image. And in the past, I've never had a problem. Like, I've never stitched together an image in Photoshop and, have it actually look unnatural or weird. It always looks completely flawless and perfect. So if you don't have Photoshop, there's tons of other softwares out there that probably do a similar thing. I think a quick Google search will yield some good results. There's iPhone apps that stitch together images. So I feel like there should be a lot of options for those of you out there who don't have Photoshop. But yeah, I still use my Epson V600 to scan. Okay, next question is from Death Eating Popcorn. That's a cool name. He or she says, "Do people make unsolicited suggestions for your art that annoys you? I will just finish a project and I'll be happy about it, and I want to enjoy the moment, but someone will tell me, you should do blank, blank, blank. I don't need your suggestions, and I want to enjoy what I just accomplished." Geez. I honestly, I do get suggestions for that, and it's not super, it doesn't bother me that much, I would have to say. Like, unsolicited feedback and critique, I can see how that can be kind of annoying, especially at first. I think when I first started sharing my art on social media, it did mildly frustrate me when people told me, things I should have done when the piece is already finished, because obviously I can't go back and fix it. And especially if it's an oil painting, they're so long and tedious. And, I definitely had in the beginning that attitude of like, well, who asked for your opinion? Like, who are you to say what I should and shouldn't do? But now, after so many years of sharing my work online and putting myself at risk, or I guess exposing myself to the possibility of being criticized online, I've kind of just gotten used to it. Like, it's part of the territory. I always say, like, you can't just choose to segregate the good parts of something and only experience the good parts of something without tolerating or at least adapting to the bad. Putting your artwork online, sharing your work with others, you enjoy the benefits of connecting with people, meeting awesome, sweet, supportive people, and, inspiring and helping a community. But you also put yourself kind of, you're susceptible now to criticism, and people have a right to support and agree with who they want, and they also have a right to disagree with who they want. And so if someone criticizes my art now, it's unsolicited, I don't really think much of it. Like, if it's good feedback, then of course I'm happy to receive it, because it's a lesson I can apply towards future artworks. It's a way I can help, improve myself. But if it's a feedback that I don't agree with, then, if they're not being rude and they're giving me feedback, I'm like, cool, I guess I just kind of ignore it. And if they are being rude, I guess I would ignore it as well. So I just feel like as time goes on and as I get older in life and have more experiences, it's like you just can't sweat the small stuff. You can't please everyone. You can't expect everyone to be nice to you and agree with you and support you. And you are going to encounter people who, have criticism for you, both constructive and at times, just flat out mean criticism. But we can't change that. Like, the only thing we can change and control is how we react to those things, how we perceive those things, how we let those things affect us. So why be bothered by something you can't control? Like, why try to force everyone to like you and to agree with you when that's literally impossible? So yeah, I do sometimes get unsolicited feedback and suggestions and mean comments even, but I don't really do anything about it, I guess. Sorry, I'm not sure if you asked me in the question what I do about it. I realized just now that you just asked me if it ever happens to me. So yeah, sorry, I totally over answered. But yeah, the short answer is yes, that does happen to me, but it's fine. Oh, and also, I just realized, like, I don't want to come off as saying you shouldn't be bothered, or that, like, I'm not trying to shame you if you are bothered by these things. Like I said in the beginning, I was feeling the same way, and it took me a long time and a lot of practice to get over it and adapt this new outlook. So if sharing your artwork online and receiving unsolicited feedback annoys you, I totally respect that, and I don't think you should feel guilty about being bothered by those things. We're all human at the end of the day. We all have our strengths and weaknesses and things that trigger us, things that make us react in a certain way. So, even now, like, even though I'm used to it, yeah, I do still feel bothered, but it's a very short, fleeting moment of being bothered, and then I'm able to let it go easily. In the past, that feeling of being bothered persisted way longer, and it took way more energy and time to let it go. So I think it's totally reasonable and fair to feel human reactions to these things. Like, when people disagree with you, when people criticize you, when people don't like you, I think it's normal and acceptable to react in whatever way, especially the human way of being bothered by it, being upset by it. So I just want to clarify, I don't feel like everyone should just let things go right away, and then if they're not able to let things go right away, they should feel ashamed of themselves. That's totally not my prerogative or what I'm trying to get across. So yeah, just wanted to clarify that. I love and support you all. Okay, next up we have a question from Cordelia, who asks, how long does it take you to finish a painting? I literally take forever because I work on too many at once, and I still have a lot of learning to do when it comes to fundamentals and techniques. It takes me a varied amount of time for paintings. Obviously, it depends on the size of the piece and also how complex it is, how many subjects are in the piece, and also how warmed up I am, so to speak. Great example is my current solo show collection. The first piece took me way longer than the second and third because I was still practicing the first piece, trying to adapt to a new style, a new method of creating, like a new process. And so the first one, there were a lot of kinks to iron out. There were a lot of mistakes I made, trial and error, time devoted to fixing, those errors. But then the second and third piece, as I got into a rhythm, I learned and remembered how to avoid certain pitfalls and mistakes. Those took me way less time because I was more practiced and able to kind of be warmed up and not have to waste time fixing careless mistakes. I was able to just execute and become familiar with the new process and, learn how to achieve certain effects, learn how to make this new style look good. So yeah, it's really a hard question to ask me how long it takes to finish a painting. It really is varied. But what I will say is there's a range, right? So I hate it when artists don't answer this question because it's like, come on, just give us something at least. So I will answer it to the best of my ability. Usually, if I am warmed up and I don't have any extenuating circumstances and I'm not going through a tough time in my personal life and, there's no external factors to throw me off course. So on average, on a healthy, normal day or a normal piece, I would say for an 8x10, it would take me around 10 to 12 hours of easel time. That's the time that I look at my video recorded footage of the piece and I sum up how many hours of footage I have. Of course, that time does not include, the time it took to do the concept sketch, to prepare the panel, to transfer the sketch, to, maybe make a color mock-up, find reference photos, lay out the reference photos. Also, I don't film every single hour that I paint. So if I were to guess and ballpark, the entire process, beginning to end, just using my amount of video footage as a starting point, I would say probably for an 8x10, it would be maybe close to 20 hours of total time. And then that's split up in between many sittings. So obviously I can't paint for 20 hours straight. So I would say usually if I'm not procrastinating or have, some sort of reason that I can't finish on time, I would like to finish a piece within 1 month. And if I have an urgent deadline, I could finish it as fast as 2 weeks. But I don't think it's normal for me to finish a piece in a week or less time unless I'm on a huge deadline crunch and I force myself, which will probably end up happening this upcoming month for my solo show. So yay. But yeah, I feel like it's okay to take forever. I know in your question you said you take forever because you work on too many at once and you also have a lot of learning to do. That's fine. You should never compare yourself against another artist, and if they take less time, you feel bad that you're taking more time. I don't think there's a direct correlation between how much time you spend on something and how good it looks or how skilled you are. And that's something I struggled with too, is I thought that if I spent longer on a piece, it meant that piece should have turned out better than a piece I spent less time on. So I used to really beat myself up if I spent a longer amount of time on a painting that turned out not looking as good, because if I spent a long amount of time on it, I'll have an expectation for it to look better. But yeah, like you said, if you're learning something new, trying out something new, or just if you're just having a bad day, sometimes we can't control it, you end up spending more time on a piece, and that's fine. I now try to segment my expectations and my reactions and my love for each piece within its own individual scope. I don't try to compare it to other pieces. I don't try to think back of oh man, I had such an easy time painting, jellyfish last month. Why is this jellyfish taking me so long this month? I try to just execute each piece individually and not think about anything else, not compare it to anything else. Sometimes I'll have a good painting day, or I'll come up with a simple concept and a piece will take me no time at all and it'll look amazing. Or, sometimes I'll struggle with a piece and, kill myself over small details. It'll also look amazing. But yeah, the amount of time you spend on something should not affect, or should not be a reflection of your skill level, your accomplishments, or the quality of the piece. So I hope that helps, and I hope that answers your question. Okay, next up we have a question from Olivia who says, "Hi Happy, hope you're doing well. I was wondering how you keep your paintings free from pet hair while they're drying. Or is this an impossible task? I have 3 fur babies and the shedding is unreal. Somehow the hair even gets into rooms they don't go in. Haha, I'm sure you know the struggle." Yes, girl, I totally know the struggle. Not only does pet hair get into rooms that my paintings don't go in, or sorry, not only does the pet hair go into rooms where my pets don't go in, but I also find pet hair like on my paintings when the pets aren't in the room. Like somehow a hair magically floated up and attached itself to my wet painting, even though I never moved the carpet. You know, there's no like wind blowing things into the air. Like there's just hair floating around in every corner of my existence all the time. Like I'm probably breathing in hair constantly. It's like hair I can't see. So yeah, sometimes I'll keep my studio locked. I'll be sitting on my ass painting for several hours without rustling anything, and then a hair will magically come up, like land on my painting. I'm like, how did you get there? Yeah, I know the struggle. I have 4 fur babies, 2 cats who can jump up and down. My tip for getting hair out of a painting is, so while it's drying, you can use a pair of tweezers and a little brush technique I like to employ. It's like I'll have to take a coarse brush. Actually, it doesn't even have to be coarse, preferably coarse. But you go against the grain and it'll lift the hair out. And if it doesn't lift the hair out, you can usually at least lift the hair up enough to get a good grip on it using a pair of tweezers. I found that when the hair is completely stuck to the surface, the painting surface, it's hard to use the tweezers because there's, you know, it's so fine and so minute that you can't grip the hair if it's perfectly flat against the surface, especially if it's stuck in like sticky, gooey paint. So you need to lift the hair off somehow so you can get a good grip. If your painting has already dried, oh yeah, sorry, before I move on, after you lift the hair out, you'll find there's like a patch because you've went against the grain on your wet painting. So there's like a hole left where the hair once was. That's totally fine. If your painting is still wet, I would just go back and patch that area up with like the same color. It's just a necessary evil. We have to end up lifting the hair out and then repainting the area that we scratched up. But if the painting's already dry, like if you found hair that somehow magically landed on your painting as it was drying and it's already kind of too dry for you to lift it up with a brush, you can use a small X-Acto knife and just gently scrape the paint off of where the hair is and then try to get a good grip. Like it's kind of the same strategy and technique as using a brush on your wet surface. Like you can use an X-Acto knife, scrape off the paint that's covering the hair on a dry surface, and then try to use the X-Acto knife to lift out as much of the hair as you can. And once you find, you know, like a loop or an end that you can catch with your tweezers, just lift that thing out. And usually if you're careful, you won't have to patch up that much because a hair is very thin. So if you only disturb a hair width amount of paint on your surface, you can usually patch it up very easily without it being super noticeable. So that is my strategy for getting out hair. Sadly, if you have pets, I found it's really hard to avoid. Even if you close off your room, even if you don't move around, don't rustle anything, somehow like hair, it probably sticks to your skin. It's probably just floating in the air constantly. It's really hard to avoid having hair land on your painting. So you just have to find ways to lift that hair out when you find them. Next is a question from Jordanka, or Jordanka. I'm sorry if I butchered your name, but she says, "Hi Happy, I was wondering how many times do you use gel medium? Is it every time you're adding a new layer or simply when you want something to have a more cohesive blend? Furthermore, is there such a thing as too much with the gel medium? Like, will there ever be a point where the paint doesn't stick?" So gel medium, or any medium in general, is not mandatory or required. So I could definitely make a painting without ever using medium as long as I remix paint that's fresh out of the tube, like paint that's not too dry. I typically only use gel medium for two reasons. One is if my paint is too gooey and I want it to become easier to work with. So the gel medium helps give the paint some more viscosity, helps make it easier, more fluid, easier to blend, easier to spread on the painting surface. And then the second reason I'll use it is that if I want to glaze, which means like I want there to be a slight transparency because I don't want to cover, my layer super opaquely. I want some of the bottom layer to show through. That gives, your painting a really nice luminosity. It helps you kind of tinge areas that you don't want to overwhelm. For example, if you want to add blush to your character's cheeks, but you still want to retain the values and the skin tones of your, previous layer, you can add a little bit of medium to a rosy pink to just give your cheeks that pink glow without having it cover all of the work you did in your previous layer. So for those two reasons, I use gel mediums or any mediums. But, you can always find a way to circumvent ever using mediums. Like if you just always squeeze out fresh paint from the tube, it's usually a little bit easier to work with. You can also use a little bit of paint thinner, like have a brush that's been dipped in paint thinner and wiped, but still kind of moist from the paint thinner. Like that will also help your paint become runnier and easier to spread. And then for the glazing effect, you can even use a dry brush, which is like I like to use an old frayed brush and just put a tiny amount of the color, like the rosy pink, if we are referring back to that example again. The rosy pink, I'll put a tiny bit of it on the old dry frayed brush, and then I'll kind of rub off as much paint as I can so that there's only a small amount left, and then I'll just kind of lightly dust or brush that onto like the cheeks of the face. And because there's so little amount of paint, once I smear it, it gives itself like a natural occurring transparency. That being said, I guess to answer your question is how many times do I use gel medium? Not very often, very, very seldomly. I try to actually accomplish most of my effects without using medium, and that's because medium does sometimes make at least gel medium, it makes my piece glossier. Like when I use too much of it, it makes certain patches shinier than others. And when it comes time to scan or photograph my piece, I don't want certain areas to be too reflective because then it's harder to scan. Then I get like a glare. So there is such a thing as using too much medium, I think, because it'll create unnecessary unevenness in like how shiny your piece is. And also like a little bit of medium goes a long way. Like if you're just trying to make your paint a little bit easier to work with, you don't have to use that much medium. Just like a little drop of it will make the paint more fluid. And if you're trying to glaze, I also don't think you need that much medium. Like just a little bit, and if you just refrain from applying too much paint to your brush, like just use a little bit of paint on your brush as little as possible, you don't really even need a medium. So when you use a medium, you don't need that much. I think medium should be like a way to supplement your oil painting process, but they shouldn't become like the major player or the main actor in your oil painting. That being said, they're awesome to use, but yeah, just a little goes a long way. You're better safe than sorry. Like use, especially if you're not experienced with it, use as little as you can in the beginning, and you can slowly add more, experiment with adding more if you need. But yeah, mediums, a little goes a long way. Okay, next up we actually have 3 different questions about galleries, so I'm just gonna read them all off at once and answer them together. The first question was from Amina, who says, "Hey Happy, I am a young artist looking to get my work displayed in galleries. What are some tips you have for the application process? And do you have anything in general you wish you knew before agreeing to be displayed in galleries?" And the next question was from Tanya, who says, "I second Amina's request. I've seen a video you posted about this, but more specifically, is there anything you wish you knew before agreeing to work with galleries? I think this would be great." And then the last gallery question is from Amy, who says, "On the gallery question theme, how do you choose what galleries to apply to? I had artwork accepted into a group show recently, and it will be my first. I am so excited but nervous too, since I don't know what to expect. Can you tell us about your experiences with opening receptions and things to look out for when working with galleries? Okay, so it seems like the general overall heart of all these questions is like, what do I wish I knew? What did I wish I knew before I started working with galleries? And also, what are my tips on how to get into galleries, what to expect? So let me just conquer the second part first. Like, how do you get into galleries? How do you know which galleries to apply to? What's the general protocol for getting into a gallery if you've never been exhibiting in one? Most galleries that have a huge online presence or somewhat of an online presence, like if they have social media and they have a website, they'll often have a section on their website that talks about their submission process. Most galleries ask you to email them a small sample of your portfolio, usually no more than 5 pieces. I don't think galleries need to see like a collection of 50 paintings. Usually they ask for your top few best works that really show your potential and your capabilities as an artist. And then they also ask you for like a small write-up, like of, why you think you'd be a good fit, what's your experience. And then I don't know if this is as common, but I've seen a few galleries ask for like a resume. Obviously if you're a first-time gallery applicant, you don't have a huge resume yet. So where you need to really shine, in my opinion, is the artwork samples in the portfolio. Doesn't mean you have to be like the best artist ever. I mean, art itself, it's so subjective. Like, how do you rank that? But I usually would recommend you taking a look at the gallery's current roster of artists, looking at their past shows, seeing what styles and skill levels they typically work with, and then seeing if you'd be a good fit. If you think you would be a good fit, definitely apply and follow the rules that they've set forth in applying. They usually have you title your email subject line a specific way and things like that. A lot of galleries don't even have call for submissions. A lot of galleries choose the method where they seek out artists and discover artists themselves and then invite the artists to do shows. They don't want everyone's applying and submitting because they get too many emails and it's too overwhelming and they're just unable to read them all. I think I've talked to a few gallery owners who say they get like hundreds of emails a week of applications. So you can imagine it's just very, very hard to find the time to run a business and look through all those emails. So there's going to be some galleries that have a protocol for how to apply. There's going to be some galleries that don't want you to apply at all. And then there's going to be some galleries that actually have open calls. Like they'll a few times a year post like, hey, currently we are accepting new artists. Please, apply in the following way. So the first step to applying for galleries is just to follow a lot of galleries, research a lot of galleries, pay attention to the ones that suit your personal style, your skill level, and, always keep an eye out for those submission calls or keep an eye out for galleries who open up their application season. And, make sure that you have a body of work that you're proud of before you apply. I think to answer the question of what I wish I knew before working with galleries and before applying to galleries is I wish I wish I had spent more time perfecting my portfolio before applying because I end up getting rejected or ignored so much, not because, the gallery's being elitist and snobby, but because I just don't think I was ready. Like when I applied, I was really overly zealous maybe, and I just wanted to try my luck. But at the time it's like I hadn't even done that many pieces yet. I hadn't really found my voice and style as an artist. So what did I expect the galleries to do when I sent them a portfolio that's very bare and minimum and the pieces don't really have a cohesive signature aesthetic, and my skill level was far too premature compared to the roster of artists that the gallery had. I'm glad I got that experience in so I knew how to apply. So when it was time for me to apply more seriously, when I had been more practiced and had maybe established myself as close enough or at least within the same general league as their current artists, I at least had enough experience applying to I feel confident. But when I applied too prematurely and I got either rejected or no response back, actually, like, one thing I'll tell you guys, a lot of times galleries don't have time to read the emails and they don't have time to send rejection letters to everyone. So if you don't get a response back, like, just know that it's normal and don't take it too hard. Like, don't take it personally. Don't let it affect your confidence. It's just simply they don't have enough time. It's nothing personal. But yeah, I wish I didn't put so much emphasis on being accepted into galleries as a measure of like my self-worth and my confidence as an artist. Like, I love gallery shows. I love going to galleries. I love being part of that whole scene. And it is a really good validation when anyone, especially a professional art business, kind of, wants you, like, wants to take you in. It validates that you're doing a good job, that your pieces look good, that you're, improving and flourishing as an artist. But like, that's not the only validation you can get as an artist. I think like something I wish I knew before working with galleries is like, don't let someone else's opinion or someone else's praise of you become the main source of confidence and joy and validation for yourself as an artist and for your work. Like, just because a gallery rejects you doesn't mean you're a bad artist. And just because a gallery accepts you and asks you to do shows doesn't mean you're necessarily gonna sell or be a successful artist. Like, we have to really train ourselves to not put the responsibility of making ourselves happy, making ourselves feel fulfilled on someone else's shoulders. Like, it's our own responsibility to become motivated, to feel proud of our work, to continue to learn and improve. That's not, you're not going to find that in someone else. And if you do temporarily, it's not always going to be consistent. So it's better to just kind of learn how to feel reassured, feel confident on your own. That's something I wish I knew. Because even when I got into galleries for the first time, if my piece didn't sell, that was also a huge source of stress and discouragement for me. Like, I would say, well, other artists sold, like, maybe I'm just not good enough. Like, I'd feel guilty. I'd feel like the gallery maybe made a mistake, or I'd feel anxious. Like, would they invite me back for another show if I didn't sell at my first 2 group shows? Like, does that mean I'm not worthy? Like, or, oh my gosh, a gallery finally accepted me. Does that mean I have to sell this piece? Otherwise they won't invite me back. Like, this is probably just a test or like some sort of, trial period. And I really have to prove myself. Like, I wish I didn't stress myself out that way. I wish I just had fun with the theme of the show, created the best piece I could, and just, reveled in the joy that, my artwork was displayed in a public place that people got to see with their real eyes, or I got to participate in this activity alongside of other artists whom I admired, and, just kind of been proud of just the ability to participate rather than put so much pressure to prove myself or seek validation or, like, make that sale or get into that fancy gallery. Like, I wish I just would have chilled and had more fun, if that makes sense. But yeah, so last question I didn't cover about the galleries was what experiences with opening receptions. Opening receptions are really fun. They're typically the busiest night of the gallery. Like, usually with shows, they run for about a month, but the opening reception is where most people come in because it's like the first night it's unveiled. A lot of artists show up. Usually there's free wine, free drinks. It's kind of like a party. Corey Helford, their opening reception, they had like DJs and stuff. It was really just a fun night. A lot of people dressed up and just like a fun local activity for art lovers to do. So I would highly suggest going to opening receptions. It's a great way to meet the gallery owners, meet potential clients, and just meet other art lovers. And it's like a fun thing to do with your friends, and seeing your artwork hung up on the wall next to other artists, it's a really good feeling. Especially like if it's your first time displaying and maybe you don't feel confident like about selling it, or you feel a little nervous because you don't have much experience, like just going there in person and seeing that it's a reality, like seeing your work on the wall, like it's really a huge boost of joy, in my opinion. It's like, wow, I kind of, I deserve to be here. Like, I love these artists, their work inspires me, and now I get a chance to do the same to another person, hopefully, or at least see my work alongside of their work. And it's a nice little hint that like I put in a lot of work into this and I deserve to feel proud of it. I deserve to see it on the wall and to have it, you know, be seen by lots of other people. So it's just like a nice thing to go to. I highly recommend going to opening receptions and seeing your work in person and seeing other art in person as well. Okay, and the last question is from Sarah, who says, "Hi Happy, hope you're well. I have been enjoying the new pieces and love the imagery you have come up with." Oh, thanks, Sarah. I was wondering what your advice would be for someone trying to decide on a theme and medium for their art. I find myself switching around a lot. I also find it hard to work out how to make myself or answer questions from people on what type of art I create because of this. I feel like I don't have a cohesive portfolio or brand. Well, this is kind of similar to like how to find your style, which is like a question that a lot of people ask and a lot of artists try to answer, myself being one of them, both in terms of asking and answering. I would say the biggest advice I have for someone trying to find their own theme, their own voice, is to just create more art. Like, finding your own style isn't something that, in my opinion at least, it's not something that's easily done through force. It's not something you can like try to do on purpose. It's something that kind of comes naturally when you created enough pieces, and it's almost like your body will tell you like what you're comfortable with, what you gravitate towards, what you find the most joy in creating and what you don't find joy in creating. Like, you'll have a natural visceral reaction to the pieces you create. Like for me, when I painted, I don't know, like my first mermaid, I was like, wow, I feel so much joy, so much fulfillment, so much inspiration from painting a mermaid. But I wouldn't have known that if I didn't paint a bunch of other things, you know, in the first place. Like if I didn't paint, I don't know, let's say like an alien and a fairy, and then I painted a mermaid, I was like, wow, I enjoyed painting this mermaid so much more than I enjoyed painting this alien or this fairy. So you got to create a lot of artwork so you can figure out through real experiences, real life trial and error, what works and what doesn't for you. And also, the more artwork you create, the more naturally like you'll get better at, you know, painting and drawing. And then when your skills improve, you also gain more confidence in trying out and experimenting new things. I think a lot of what gives people their unique voice as an artist, their unique aesthetic, is one, in like the style in which they paint or draw, and also the concepts in what they paint and draw. You know, you can have a unique style in your subject matter, in your composition, in your color palette, in your line work. You know, some artists have a flat illustrative style with a simple color palette. Some artists have a textured, impressionistic style with a saturated color palette. Some artists like to paint women and surreal women. Other artists like to paint maybe landscapes or more realistic women. So these are things that you can only figure out if you have painted and drawn enough to know with confidence what you like, to know in confidence what your strengths and weaknesses are. If you try to paint a bunch of photorealism and just realize that you don't like it, you're not inspired or motivated to do it, or you don't feel like you're telling an interesting story from it, then you know, like, hey, maybe maybe my voice doesn't lie in photorealism. Maybe it lies in something more cartoon or concept based. So I would suggest just keep making art and pay attention to the things that bring you extra joy, the things that make you extra excited to work on, and try to work on those things more and see where that takes you. Don't be afraid to try new things and experiment, but also don't deviate too far. I feel like if I found something that I love, like mermaids, for example, if I painted one mermaid and I felt like it was really fun and wow, it's like I discovered like a hidden treasure, then paint 3 more, see how you can evolve that concept and really make it yours. Maybe the first time you painted a mermaid, she, was like cute and sweet and looked like the Disney Little Mermaid. So maybe for the next one, try painting a scarier mermaid or more mature mermaid. In my case, it's like I remove the eyebrows and try to make my mermaids look even more like fish and less like humans, So just tweaking something you love will also help you establish like that unique signature voice. And, if it's something you hate, then feel free to deviate and try something completely new. But all in all, the thing you have to do most is keep creating, keep practicing, keep making art, and have fun with it. All right. I have to wrap up this podcast now. I have like 15 seconds left. Thank you guys so much for listening and for your support. I love you all so much. I can't wait to share more pieces with you, and I can't wait to share more rewards with you next month. I hope you have a great day. Take care of yourself, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.